Hello and welcome to the now annual UKGameshows.com Bothers Bar poll of the year results. We are looking this year at the game shows that have been broadcast in the UK for the year 2017. My name is David Bodicum. I'm a professional game show consultant. I've been involved with many successful shows and codecs. With me, I have the man who's been collating all of your votes that have been flooding in. It's Nick Gates. Hello, Nick.
Good evening, everyone.
And what's the turnout been this year?
Turnout this year has been, I believe, record-breaking, about 20% up on last year, if not more. So, good stuff.
Well, excellent. Well, we'll look forward to seeing everyone speak their brains tonight. And we also have with us another professional quiz guru, Daniel Peake. Hi, Dan.
Good evening. How are we doing?
Fine. And what's your feeling in the water for the results? What do you think is going to happen?
Oh, I've worked on a few shows this year, and I'm really hoping that one of them comes high up on the list. So my feeling is that one of my shows will come high up on the list.
Okay, so you're just looking at it from a purely selfish point of view.
Yes.
That's fine. Okay, so while we're here in the UK Game Shows Bothers Bar studio, and everyone is feverishly just dotting the I's and crossing the T's on the final results to make sure that everything's accounted for. While we're doing that, why don't you open your second screen, as everybody's got one these days, or open a new tab on your browser and take part in our viewer poll, where you can, while you're listening to us witter on, you can keep your fingers busy and give us your opinion on a few extra bonus questions that we're going to cover later on in the broadcast. So if you go to tinyurl.com/bbpoll, POLL, 2017 part 1. That's tinyurl.com/bbpoll 2017 part 1. And you can let us have your opinion on these extra little bonus questions live as we go through the broadcast. And while we're talking, please do go to Twitter as well and send us your questions or comments on what we're saying to the hashtag #BBPoll, and we will try and have a look at those as we go along. So the first category that we deal with is the Hall of Shame. This is the hopefully not too serious and tongue-in-cheek look at what people think the worst new show of the year is. So Nick, let's have a quick look at the last year's results. So first and second place was for ITV1, and then the other three were all BBC One.
Yes.
And of course, the only show that got recommissioned out of those was, in fact, the winner. So there we go. Although it has to be said that I think ITV Studios does have a stake in the people that make that show. So, maybe, if I'm being honest, there might be other reasons for that. So let's have a quick rundown, Nick, if you wouldn't mind, of positions 10 to 6.
Okay, positions 10 to 6. At number 10, The Crystal Maze.
Ooh, okay.
Joint 8th, Big Heads, and Don't Ask Me, Ask Britain.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
At 7, Let It Shine. And at 6, Don't Say It, Bring It.
Okay. The Let It Shine one was quite interesting. I thought everyone thought, "Oh, this is really brilliant" for the first couple of shows, and then everyone was quite glad that when it finished. And then it turned out that what people were actually auditioning for wasn't quite what the actual role wasn't in the stage, or there was some
controversy. It was for backup singers, wasn't it, or backing singers, wasn't it, rather than the lead role? It just felt a little weird.
Except that they sort of said that, well, actually, no, they are sort of on stage pretty much throughout the performance doing the backing singing, so they are kind of starring in a that kind of sense. But okay, well, we'll probably say something about most of those shows anyway throughout the the broadcast. So let's get into the meat of it. What was number 5?
At number 5, Cannonball.
Right.
Intriguing. I'm wondering why that is higher than, say, Big Heads. Because I watched both shows and I thought that the look of Cannonball looked better than the look of Big Heads.
Well, judging by what other people have been talking about, I don't personally get a chance to sit down with my kids and watch mini shows because we're just too busy cooking and things. But I have seen some comments and heard about some parents that find that Big Heads is a much funnier show for kids to sort of join in with because it's sort of a bit more slapstick, whereas Cannonball is a bit more repetitive, and they sort of
a bit more competitive. It's the same joke every 2 minutes, 10 hours.
Yeah. Well, I have to say it was one of my 5 picks, and I think my main problem with it is that what happens is people sit on some kind of inflatable thing, and then they just let physics happen to them. And that isn't really a game show in my book. That's just a science experiment. If someone just floats across a lake faster than somebody else, can you honestly say that they've deserved to win? No, it's just because of, well, luck or the fact that they're a bit fatter or something. I mean, it's nothing to do with the fact that they've used their skill to win a prize.
The end game was, I guess, slightly more skill based than the rest, but yeah,
Yes.
I do get what you're saying with the rest of them. It was,
Yeah. No, I love the end game. I have to say, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think it helped that they jumped around the game so much. They haven't really worked out what the format was for quite a long time. It's about 45 minutes into it when the end game sort of happened. There was no when it started. There was no idea how I actually won or anything. Just here's some people jumping for a thing. Here's people jumping for a different thing. Oh, that person's the final now. It's format being very confusing was one of the things that came up quite a lot in the viewer comments.
Okay,
Right.
let's move on. Number 4.
Number 4, cheap.
Not surprised. Actually, I am slightly surprised that it's only number 4. And go on.
I'd say there are 2 very divisive shows on the Hall of Shame and Hall of Shame lists. This is one of them.
I wouldn't be surprised if I
on
saw
the other
this.
one a little bit as well, sort of.
I wouldn't be surprised if I also saw this on the Hall of Fame. So I've got a soft spot for cheap.
So
There were a lot of things wrong with it. I'm not going to deny that, but I thought it had a lot going for it. I thought the idea of having a game around which there was comedy, there was a slightly Avanti and Outro-esque feel to it, wasn't there?
Yes.
The game was embedded in something that was just essentially comedy. And I quite like that. It's just it all swung and it missed. It all slightly went wrong. It doesn't help that the format was also slightly broken. But I don't think it was unsalvageable. I think they could have retooled it for a second series. But those who didn't like it, and which was most people based on the ratings it got, I'm actually surprised it isn't higher on this list. But I still liked it.
Apparently, there were a few production problems when contestants took ages to make a decision, and I think there were some rumors about some of the comedians on the show were finding it so difficult to come up with jokes about tins of peas all day that they sort of randomly disappeared for a few episodes and then just came back at the end just to have a rest or something. So, yeah, I don't think it was the happiest production in the world. But I mean, I did quite like the idea.
Yeah.
The sort of
Yes.
the basic sort of soap opera meets game show, yes, and Noel probably could have been the right person for that, yes.
Yep.
But sort of a Millionaire Light game, well, I think it's a wrong year for that kind of stuff. I think that's sort of been and done, and it desperately needed some sort of atmosphere to make it more like a sitcom. And also, I think the shots needed to be a bit tighter, more like a traditional kind of
A bit more open all hours.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. Sort of. I think sometimes with these big sets, they look fantastic, but actually, that's not how a sitcom would be shot. unless you're in a supermarket warehouse or something, which they.
And it had weird brake bumpers as well, which sort of it meant, are we watching an advert or have we come back to the show yet? So which was just a little bit disconcerting for viewers.
Yeah.
I think the first thing that came to mind after watching the first episode was this Deeds in the studio audience, and without it, the atmosphere is a little bit dead.
I know it's really tough to get a studio audience for a show that you're meant to be recording 4 of a day, but it's sometimes you either have to do it and pay for the money to do that, or just not do the show. Yeah, because otherwise there's no in between really. I'm quite amused that so many people have actually got us rigged up to their main televisions as if we're a real live program today. So I hope you're enjoying what you're hearing so far. Right. On number 3.
At number 3, Letterbox.
Only number 3?
Well, I have to say the top 3 are quite close.
Okay.
I'm not sure I agree with the actual phrasing top 3, but certainly the show's being the top 3 is not in dispute, I don't think.
So out of Letterbox and Cheap, I would watch Cheap.
Absolutely.
Again. I just thought, to me, Letterbox was Wheel of Fortune, but without the fun, really.
The problem with Letterbox to me is it's tried to be, well, amongst other things, but in using obscure words, and obscure with weird letters in, all you're doing is dragging out people asking for common letters. So it takes ages for it to be a forward motion for the show, and it's so boring.
Well, what I found boring was the repetition of Mel, bless her, having to sort of drive the comedy by going, "You want a P? Okay, let's look for a P. Is a P there? We're looking for P." It's like to do that 30 times a show, 40 times a show. It really got quite grating. And the other things that I thought that like if you're going to do a really simple idea, at least do it really, really slickly. So like the title sequence, it had all these colourful letters of Letterbox, and then it sort of went into the background into a nice curved shape. And then he thought, oh, I know what they're going to do. They're going to merge through to the live picture, so the lights will come up on the set. So it looks like the title sequence is merged perfectly with the letters that are on the background behind the set. And no, they didn't do that. It just because the letters in the set weren't quite the same as the letters in the title sequence. And then there was all the sort of weird stuff with the letterbox opens up, but with $2,500, but except that you haven't won $2,500 necessarily.
Yes.
So we're going to take away three bundles of cash. And then this sort of weird thing where she had to pull up all the letters at the back, and as if they're on a bit like it was a Milton Bradley hangman game. Why couldn't it just spring up automatically? So yeah, there was just a lot of rough edges that I thought could have been filed off to make it just a bit more whizzy when you have such a very, very basic game. Nevertheless, it's been recommissioned, so what do we know?
Unbelievable. That genuinely makes me really angry, actually. But never mind. Right. Number 2. Len Goodman's Partners in Rhyme. Which it had issues. I didn't think it was interesting enough to be that high up, to be honest. I mean, what it did was it's like a watered-down catchphrase, but in that, it was sort of just not interesting rather than actively awful in quite a lot of ways, I think.
Well, I don't think that was one of my top 5 at all. And I mean, I can see why it could grate, but I thought they took a basic principle and span it into a fairly okay show. But yeah, I can understand the sort of hatred for it, but
between Letterbox and Partners in Rhyme, I'd watch Partners in Rhyme. I quite liked it, I will admit. I thought it had quite a generation game, sort of an 80s, 90s, an old school vibe, in that it was almost like the game was sort of everyone was there for fun, not for the game, if that makes any sense. And I quite liked that. And I thought the general premise of essentially charades and things like that was okay. I think the questions were a bit easy and could have been a bit more interesting, but overall, it made me smile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought it fitted the bill of a sort of a family-friendly game show quite well. So
I think trying to put it in sort of the heart of early prime time was a mistake. It's too light for that. If they started it off at sort of 5, 6 o'clock, it might have done. People might have hasted a bit less. I think people were expecting a bit too much from it. I suspect.
All right, so I haven't really thought about what the winner could be, but I just can't really remember much about the last year anyway. So just hit me with it, Nick. What is the winner of the worst game show of 2017?
Babushka.
Fair enough. I agree.
I think that's how you spell it, right?
You haven't got your Cyrillic keyboard out, I see. Well, never mind. Yes, I agree with this. I think Rylan was a great host, and I'm not just saying that because I have worked with him, but he was a good host for the show.
Clang.
But just the format was broken.
Massively broken. Well, the end gamble was a bit weird. I mean, if I want to double or quit on anything, I'll just go down to the casino and just lump my money on there. Frankly, I don't need to do it in the glare of a TV audience. It's just quite strange.
Double or nothing is a rubbish gamble at the end of an hour. We've had to work for an hour to get any sort of money at all. To then ask people to double it or lose it all on one simple thing. It's something not many people are going to do unless they just haven't won much money. So it's just no drama there at all, really. And as a show, it's just every 5 minutes there's lose everything they've got, and no one's going to want to watch that. Why would you watch that? What's the entertainment in that?
Especially in its slot, which was where the chase was. Had it been where Tipping Point was, I think people would have been more lenient on it. I mean, it would have still probably topped this list anyway. But putting it in where the chase was, which is a quizzer's quiz, I guess you could say, much more questiony. And then you've got this; they're just entirely different. It much more fits the Tipping Point slot. But just the format, I just wish it had been better. As you say, the losing the money every 2 or 3 times, all your money in the show, it just kills any forward momentum.
And the problem is we have true or false questions. If you get it wrong, you lose your money. But the questions were so easy, they were pointless. So what's the point of them?
Yep. Did you lose your money if you got the question wrong?
Yes, very much. Every time you made a mistake, your money gone. For any error, basically. I think there was one episode where a team managed to get like a big goal early. You managed to keep it to the end against all the odds. The odds are always against you. If you play a perfect game, the odds at the end are actually massively against you, 2-1 against you. And that's just picking anything in it. And of course, if you do have money towards the end, you play as conservatively as possible, which is boring.
Yeah. Do we think that the general idea of Babushka, where it's sort of pushing your luck with various dolls, if it was retooled in some way, would be an interesting show?
Yes, it's just I wouldn't do it as a deal or no deal show.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
I've just been informed of how much of Babushka's cost and to expect a second series, so look out for that in future. From someone in production.
Right. Oh, wow. Well, they've got time to retool the format.
Well, it needs retooling because it's bloody terrible as it stands.
On the Twitter feed, Alex McMillan says that Big Heads had a USP where Cannonball didn't, I'd say. That's probably fair enough.
Big Heads, of course, did win the Montreux. It won the Golden Rose.
And I know that it was just budget issues, which meant that they repeated quite a lot of games. Had they had a bigger budget, they would have had far more games on Big Heads. So,
Tom Flynn says that that's not a game, that's just physics, should be my new catchphrase. What else have we got here? Ian Weaver, our UK Game Shows reviewer, said that for full disclosure, he put down 2 for Name Your Price, Pitch Battle, tattoo artist and put Big Heads as 8th.
Right, Name Your Price came 14th, and Pitch Battle came 13th. She wasn't the only person to get to put votes down for that. Was your ones you voted for?
Name Your Price, Pitch Battle, Tattoo Artist of the Year.
Tattoo Artist of the Year. He was the only person to vote for that.
Yeah, and Big Heads as 8th. I don't know why he's put 8th there. Maybe he meant 5th. Anyway, well, let's keep moving on. So let's have a look at what you've been saying on the internet. So I'll just quickly switch over.
I mean, polling people on the internet is always a good idea. Nothing bad can come from this.
Okay. Hopefully.
Oh, it's very exciting. Pictures, by the way, of sending you're sending yourself watching the stream. We're quite enjoying those. Hashtag BB poll to look at them if you like, if you want to search them.
Okay. Okay, it is this one. I just have to swap over. Is that right?
There we go. Yep.
That's it. It's, yeah, because I've got it on the same window as my Hangout, which wasn't very clever. Sorry about that. Okay, so was 2017 better or worse than 2016 for UK game shows? Most people thought better. About 31% said the same, and 23% said worse. So generally positive, yeah. Which channel broadcasters made the game shows you enjoyed the most? So the BBC, I think, has increased their share because I think they were about 50% last year, and together they've got 60% pretty much. ITV got 15%. Channel 4's share very much down, I think, from last time. For Sky, Dave is still doing well. I think they got about 20% last year, but they're still represented. Do you think the UK has had more or less influence in the world game show market than 10 years ago? No one has any idea.
That is astonishing, yeah.
I would have said less influence because there's just more countries competing than there were before, from 10 years ago. So
I can't think of many things you exported this year either. Like
Israel, South Korea, even China to some extent have joined the party. If you could swap the UK's entertainment output for any other countries, what would it be? So 37% of people say the UK is best.
Yes.
Then next we have Japan, which is the one I would have gone for. Then USA.
Oh no, I wouldn't have picked USA or Canada.
And then, well, no, we've now got USA and Japan equal, and Netherlands is next.
I know there's Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy in the States, but that's basically it. Oh, and Survivor and Amazing Race, I guess. But
yeah, it's been a while since we've had the next mega hit game show. What do you think will be the next big thing? Let's have a look. So live interactive shows. Fred Neal be making it. Large participation. Taskmaster meets Game of Thrones. High stakes, hungry hippos.
That's basically it's like a House of Game of Games, probably.
The road to Tortician, of course.
I didn't write that, but perhaps I should have done.
Lots of House of Games references here. A Get Out of Debt show, sponsored by various finance companies. Well, certainly advertiser-sponsored shows are a big thing in other countries, if not here yet. Armchair Detectives, as it isn't a general knowledge questions-based game show. Something like Dog Eat Dog, fronted by Noel and Sandy.
I presume that's Noel Fielding, rather than Noel Edmonds.
Be more like Hot Dog Eat Hot Dog, surely.
Oh.
A new ITV celebrity format. The X Factor and I'm a Celeb are pretty tied, so ITV need a big hit for the end of the year to avoid another Strictly drubbing. Well, the new head of ITV has said exactly that today.
Well, it's sort of one of the reasons why Dancing on Ice is back. They rested it because they were looking for another big hit and they haven't really found one, so they brought it back.
Okay, so excuse that going into the Matrix here, but I'll try and sort that out next time. Okay, so we're back. Thank you for your views. Right, so now we're going to look at the happy side of things, the Hall of Fame for the best new show. And this is a rundown of what we had last time. And quite interestingly, it was a 5-way split between BBC One, BBC Two, ITV Channel 4, and Dave. Everyone had a bit of a piece of the pie last time. And all of those got recommissioned except the Code, which I think isn't coming back. But at least it had 2 or 3 series, didn't it? So, maybe it will come back. I don't know, but that's what I've.
And a Go 8-Bit Film 2 series last year. They've only shown one. The second one's been shown in February, I think. So.
Okay. Yes, that's fair enough. Okay, so let's have the 6 to 10 rundown, please.
Okay, 6 to 10 Hall of Fame. In joint 9th, we have Big Heads and Raven. In 8th, Lego Masters. In 7th, Harry Hill's Alien Fun Capsule. In 6th, The Boss.
Fair enough.
Alien Fun Capsule really stretched what I thought a game show was, to be honest. But that's fine. It's interesting. If you want to discount that, 11th was cheap. So there you go.
I'm glad there's a bit of love for it.
Yeah. Raven, I think, probably deserved it better. It was pretty good as a remake, I thought. Big Heads, again, it was fine. Lego Masters probably was standout there, really.
Yeah, it was a very mixed bag there of a children's show, an ITV variety show, a sort of a skills show, a comedy show, and a sort of a proper daytime BBC quizzer. So
quite a 90s quiz, I think I'd say, The Boss.
More early 2000s, I think.
Sorry, yes, yeah.
Right, let's hit the top 5 with which one?
Number 5. Okay, 4 and 5 are very, very close, but in number 5 is 5 Gold Rings.
Yeah, appropriate that it's in number 5. Not a bad show. I thought it was a decent attempt at a pin the tail on a donkey show.
What, Spot the Ball, I thought.
Spot the Ball, pin the tail on a donkey. Where is this? It was a reasonable, fun thing. It must be quite a technically challenging show with the scale of it.
We're going to film a second series in Austria rather than Amsterdam. It can't be that bad, surely.
Yeah, I chipped in a few questions for the next series, and you're right. It is harder to do than you think. I think the actual format of it is very, very clever because I've tried to come up with similar things to this in the past, and all I could think of was sort of, well, once you've done maps and the human body, where do you go from there? And the thing about the missing elements of a paid show, that was the real genius thing that's made that show work, and it's very clever, all the different spins on it that they've come up with. The actual format I could take or leave, but I believe they're trying to. I think
they've really changed it, and I think it's a very good change. Whether it's going enough to bring people back who stopped watching it previously, I don't know. But it's more of a game.
There's been quite a long gap between series 1 and 2, and there's not much of a run of shows. There's only sort of 6 shows, isn't it?
6 episodes, yeah.
So,
are they doing a play along app again for the second series?
Doing the app, pushing the app. It's still hiding to nothing.
Yes, I agree.
That's under review. That's another thing that the ITV boss said.
They were certainly they recorded it with second series as if the app was happening.
What I mean is that ITV are sort of going to do a bit of navel gazing about where they want to go with interactivity in the future.
Yeah. Oh, interesting.
Because it's sort of, hey, watch our show, but whilst you're watching our show, don't look at our show, look at your phone. And it's sort of...
The thing is, everyone just took photos of themselves pointing at the screen and posted it on Twitter. So everyone is probably able to enjoy it just watching it.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go to number 4.
Number 4, Crystal Maze.
I have opinions here.
Go for it.
Okay.
Shouldn't be in the top 5. I think if a show is remade, it has to be really, really good. I think it is good, but it is not really, really good. So therefore, I'm disappointed.
Yeah, when I saw Revival, I thought I was going to be angry, but actually I was just disappointed. And only in retrospect am I actually a bit angry. I had a lot of production people vote, and they all said it was amazing what they did on the budget they had, and I think that's a fair point to have. But to watch, it's just aggravating. I really want to like it, and I just sort of.
I really hope
okay.
it gets a second series, because I think they'd iron everything out, and because they a lot of the cost was building half of this.
Yeah.
I know they've taken it down for sets, but the initial investment's been done now. So get at least a second series out of it and tweak things and make slightly more interesting games. I thought the games were okay, but I thought they weren't as good as the original games. Yeah, I was just disappointed.
I just think when people have decided it's not very good, they're not going to come back to it. So I don't see much point is the problem.
Well, I'm a bit too close to this to offer.
Come on, David, something.
I will say two things. One is that I can assure you that the production team, whether they made a change for the change's sake or whether they try to go traditional, for all of the different things that they had to make decisions on in terms of transitions, editing, number of games, costumes, and all sorts of things like that, that all of those changes were made with a lot of thought. And whether you thought that they ended up with the right decision at the end of the day is up to you to decide. But they didn't go into this blindly, and they put in an awful lot of effort and discuss things an awful lot. So that's one thing. But I forgot what the other thing was now. But oh yes, that's what it was. The thing that sort of I didn't like the most was that if the whole point of the Crystal Maze is it's sort of a fantasy show, you built this entire set so that people come to this little world that you're not quite sure what it is or where it is, and the people are sort of tested in various games, and the Richard O'Brien had a lot of fun pretending that it was a little world with people in it and characters, and that he lived there and so on. And while I thought Richard Ayoade was an inspired casting choice, and I liked the setup of him being an over-officious maze master and all the health and safety jokes and things like that, the fact that so many of his other jokes were about the fact that actually this is really just a TV show and it's all edited and it's not real, and I've just hit the cameraman and so forth. It's
a bit sort of not disrespectful, but kind of taking a negative view on the maze rather than a whimsical view.
Yeah, there's that, but also the fact it's just ruining the illusion. And I know that Richard O'Brien would occasionally slightly let the mask slip, and he would sort of talk to us as viewers, and that it was a show, but it was almost as if the cameraman had come to this magical fantasy world to broadcast from the Crystal Maze out back to the real world, whereas in this version it was quite clear that this was a set in Bristol that people could come to on the M5. So that was the thing that I thought was the real bum note, that you might as well just set it in ITV Studios if you're gonna treat it like that. Otherwise, I thought that it did actually feel like the Crystal Maze, and it was a very good close approximation. And if some of the things like games and whatever didn't feel quite as exciting, maybe that might be because they cheated a lot more on the original show than maybe people admit to. So, but there we are. Okay. Well, I think we've said everything there. Let's go to number 3.
At number 3, Armchair Detectives.
Hey!
Now, for full disclosure, I was the plot producer on this show, so I'm completely biased. So, Dan, what did you think?
I thought it was bloody marvellous. And for full disclosure, I was working for David. Oh, he's a hard taskmaster, you know.
Yeah. Well, we tried our hardest on it. And I thought objectively, I thought the studio stuff was brilliant. I thought Susan was good.
Susan was great.
The fact that the production team had to produce a drama, edit it, and then a game show, and then edit that. I think that all showed on the budget a little bit here and there, and the fact that it was having to be done for a daytime show budget was really, really tough. So that's why maybe some of the shots were not framed as nicely or shot as luxuriously as maybe a sort of a soap opera might have been. So, but it would be fun to try and get that right for another series, or it might be the sort of show that works better maybe as a once a week thing on a Saturday rather than the daytime thing. Maybe it never will be able to realize its full potential on a daytime budget. It would be better somewhere else in the schedule, if I'm being honest. But nevertheless, after a mixed reaction on Twitter, more and more people seem to like it as it went along. So we'll see what happens. I don't think any decision's been made as yet. What did you think, Nick?
Well, I didn't work on it, and I'm not really into murder mysteries, so I watched one episode and couldn't get into it. So that's my esteemed criticism. I couldn't get into it. Sorry.
Okay, fair enough. There's plenty of other TV to watch.
That's it. And I didn't vote for it myself, but a lot of people did. So congratulations. I don't begrudge you your success. Absolutely not. Right, number 2. It's Richard Osman's House of Games.
Ooh.
And I've been asked by production to point out it's Richard Osman's House of Games, not House of Games.
Yes, well, 2 things about that. One is that I haven't got room for Richard Osman's House of Games. And the second thing, it's like Bob's Full House is part of the title, whereas Richard Osman's is not necessarily really part of the title of the format.
I'm looking forward to Cyril Thorold's Richard Osman's Maison de Jus on France 3 sometime in the summer, probably. Anyway, yes, it's good, wasn't it?
I thought this was a neat little format. Had a nice atmosphere to it. The idea of having the same comics or personalities across a week for them to, basically a little bit like Taskmaster, for them to bring out the competitive sides and have a story across the week, I thought was a really nice idea.
I thought it was good. I was just slightly disappointed that they sometimes repeated games even within a week. And I definitely think that the final should have been scored better, or rather the way that the points transferred from the Monday to Thursday to the Friday could have been done better, I think, as I posted on Bother's Bar, because sometimes it was possible for people to have no stake in the Friday final whatsoever. And there was ways of fixing that. Endemol can pay me a few £1,000 if they want me to tell them how I think it could be better. But definitely, I like that sort of mini-game format, and the questions were definitely written with some wit.
Yeah, so that's what I noticed more than anything else. Is that the questions were witty and quite funny, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, they were question edited by Alan Connor, who took over from me on Only Connect, so I taught him everything he knows. Well, he's a comedy writer with Charlie Brooker and so forth. So, yeah. And it's coming back.
50 episodes, yeah.
Yeah.
They're going to need a lot more games, obviously, but hopefully there'll be some more.
At least it's a sort of show where you can try a game, and if it doesn't work out, you can just use it that once, and then it'll never see the light of day again. And you haven't wasted a whole episode on it. You've wasted maybe 5 minutes, and you've gone, okay, that hasn't worked. And there were a couple of games like that weren't particularly good, but that's okay, because there were some games that were really, really good. Answer Smash is always going to be a favourite of mine. Distinctly Average, I found myself liking surprisingly a lot, where numerical answer, 2 teammates, and the official answer the team gives is the average of their 2 answers, which is surprisingly fun.
Yeah. I think if they could somehow find the budget to have a couple of slightly more throwaway games that aren't played 10 times in the series, so that each episode can slightly feel a little bit more unique, that would be good. I think I agree with that. Right, so let's rack our brains. What would be number one?
I can't think what we haven't had yet.
Hmm.
Oh,
So
come
we've
on,
got
come
some
on,
good
Babushka.
comments in the Twitter going in a minute. Do you want me to answer?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Ah.
Ah.
And there's some clear water here, actually. Although it does help that evidently Mighty Productions got the vote out, and a lot of the ex-contestants towards the end gave it a few votes. But it was doing well before that anyway. It was pretty much neck and neck with House of Games. So a lot of people, a lot of Richard Osman fans who voted sort of House of Games and Pointless also voted for Impossible. So really, fair enough, I suppose.
It's a fun question gimmick. Which of these is right? Which of these is wrong? And which of these is very wrong? It's a nice, simple spin on a question.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely a very unique question style, and it certainly was rating very well. Even repeats of Impossible were rating sort of about, was it 1.2, 1.3 million before Armchair Detectives took over and kind of ruined that run. Yeah, I'd say, and it's coming back as well. I think they were sort of, the production team were a little bit doubtful as to whether they'll get a recommission, but it's rating well, and it's been recommissioned. So well done to them.
I think Impossible and Tenable came as sort of shows that if I was off for an afternoon, it became a bit of a treat to actually just sit down and watch it. I wouldn't watch it. I don't tend to watch much daytime stuff generally, because I don't finish work till 7:30. I haven't got the time. But if I was about, then I quite look forward to it. Because it's always quite funny when 20 people get knocked out on a question, basically.
It's also a show with quite interestingly written questions as well. That, again, like House of Games, there's a little bit of wit in them, not as much as House of Games, of course. But yeah, there's I see what they've done there, and it's moments like that that make it interesting.
Just looking at Twitter comments. Congrats to Louis Spence's Crystal Maze for coming fourth, says Alex McMillan. I was at the set when that particular episode was being recorded, and without spilling the beans too much, I know there were certainly some members of the production team that weren't too unhappy when he got locked in. Oh, what else have we got? Greg Lowe says, if you're going to revive the Crystal Maze and give it the budget to make it good, and also a host with a bit of energy, well, I mean, apart from the number of episodes and the number of games, sort of the ratio of that going from 4 to 5, and the sort of losing a certain number of episodes per show, games per show, which is just because of running times of a number of adverts that you have these days.
There was a lot of chat. They could have got at least 2 more games in. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There was 24 minutes of game from what someone suggested, and that's a 45-minute running time.
Liam Davis says the moment when Susan Calman knew who the killer was my highlight of that show. For Armchair Detectives. Scott Ruck said, one note for Armchair Detectives, I sort of liked the low-key drama part because the low-keyness never distracted from the game. Well, yes, I suppose there were certainly some shots that were deliberately shot clunkily so that you weren't listening and watching at the same time. Daniel Hurst says, agree with Dan's hope for a few changes in the second series of Crystal Maze, but worry that there's still about half the first series to show, isn't there?
Yes, still 7 episodes still to go out.
Yeah.
First run.
Gwynam Jane says, disappointed not to see Astronauts in the top 10. Yes, I voted for that.
It almost did. It came joint 12 with Babushka.
Oh, really?
Wow. Yeah.
That's as good as Babushka.
11th was Cheap. 12th was Astronauts and Babushka. Right. 14th, Price is Right. 15th, Blind Date and Your Face on Mine, which I almost voted for, but I had room for 5. So 17th, Bromans. I know a lot of people are interested in Bromans, so there you go.
I voted for the Astronauts because I thought it was very BBC, but it was done very well. It never outstayed its welcome. It kept the pace up and had some great access to to locations and things. Right. Anyway, let's move on. I'm sure I'm clicking on the right screen. Yes, I am. So it's time for another view poll. So if you go to this URL this time, and it's quite an important one because we're going to give you the opportunity, because we've had 12 polls before this one. We're going to give you the opportunity to do a poll of polls. So of the last 12 best of winners and of the last 12 worst of winners, which show is the best of the best and the worst of the worst. So go to tinyurl.com/bbpoll 2017 part 2. And you can let us have your opinion on that. We also have our now regular Hidden Gem Award. So all the little shows that tend to get a bit missed in the digital schedules, or the children's shows or radio shows or things like that, or regional shows as well, that maybe we thought, in our opinion, wouldn't get into the top 10. You can sort of put in a mention for any shows like that you want to draw our attention to. Okay, so that's the URL, tinyurl.com/bbpoll 2017 part 2. Okay, we're going to move on to a bit of analysis while you're going to do that. So I thought it'd be interesting to see if we took the data from previous years, and hear all the previous winners for the worst new game show. How many of those do you think got recommissioned? And for how long? Just instinctively, without sort of thinking through it.
I would have said about half.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, the actual answer is effectively 4.
How long was the mint on for?
Which one?
The mint.
I think it straddled like a New Year Christmas period. I think so. It sort of just creeps into the next year. I know it wasn't on that long, but that's the answer to that one. So, not apart from the slight anomaly of Love Island and the fact that ITV owns the company that makes Alphabetical, then generally we seem to have got most of these decisions right. Okay. So let's now ask the same question about best shows. Again, without thinking about it, just sort of gut feeling, how many of those got recommissioned?
I would hope about 80-90%.
No, it's not. It's about 3/4, I think.
So you'd say about 9 then?
Yeah.
9 is exactly right.
Ah.
But of those, only 3 had any kind of real long-term run, and Golden Balls sort of had 3 years. But it shows that even like the best show of the year only has a 1 in 3 chance of being 1 in 4 chance, really, of being a long-term, multi-year hit. It's really tough, isn't it?
I mean, not many of those have sold abroad either, really. I mean, Poker Face did, Golden Balls didn't, Jewel wasn't really ours anyway, I don't think. Cube, that sold. £1 Million Drop, that sold. Secret of Fortune, no. Break, I don't know. 5 Bits of Fortune, no. 2 Tribes, no. 1,000 Heartbeats, no. 8-Bit, no. So, yeah.
Of those ones that didn't get recommissioned, Jewel, Breakaway, and 5 Minutes to a Fortune, there are fans of those shows that would have wished for a second bite of those. But I just thought that would be an interesting.
Actually, Breakaway got 2 series.
Yes, just in the same year. Yeah. Okay, so let's go on to the Golden 5 now, which is for your favourite shows of the year, whether they're new this year or not. So that's what happened last year. The top 3 were the same as previous year, and I think even the year before that. And Taskmaster was a new entry, and Tipping Point joined at number 5. So is it going to be a time for a bit of rejigging in the order? Let's see. So 10 to 6, please, Nick.
Okay, number 10, Countdown. Number 9, Crystal Maze.
Oh, good.
Number 8, Rich Osmond's House of Games.
Wow.
Number 7, Tipping Point.
Ooh, out of the top 5.
Yeah, number 6, Impossible.
Okay.
So we've got something new in the top 5.
Yes. And it's slightly rare, I think, that the winner of the best poll hasn't appeared in the top 5 of the Golden 5. So
I think that's correct. Yeah, I'm not checking it out, but I think you're absolutely right about that. Yeah,
I think that is fairly unusual. So, right.
There's a slight jump number 5 and a slight jump number 4. And then the top 4 are actually pretty close. But at number 5 is Tetherball.
Oh, I'm pleased by that. That's a fun show. I like it. Simple format. I'm impressed they've done the questions as well as they have in the second series.
Yes, they've definitely solved a problem there by doing some clever things. It's made it a little bit of a crapshoot. Sometimes you get a really, really easy question. Sometimes you get one that has that one really, really hard answer in it. I remember one about the top 10 most visited museums, and one of them was like one of the towers in the Tower of London, which you don't really think of being a museum particularly. I think they shouldn't have used that as an endgame question. However, generally speaking, I thought the question editing was pretty good. So I've really enjoyed Tenable. I enjoyed the first series, and I watched pretty much all of the seconds. And there's 2 more series already in the can.
Yep. I think one's meant to be starting end of this month. I might be wrong. Yeah, see you soon. At number 4, Taskmaster.
Good. Oh no.
What have I done? Okay.
Yep, very happy with Taskmaster being the top 5. It's one of the few shows I will watch live every week, which in an age of catch up and digital and everything, I think is saying something.
Yeah. I think it was Alex McMillan did an analysis of how many tasks there were and the points values and things like that. And when you sort of realize that there's like 38 or 42 tasks a series, you sort of go, "Ooh, wow, that's actually quite tricky." So it makes you appreciate after so many series, other than 5 series, that they've actually done a pretty good job of keeping up the quality of the tasks. I sort of tried to write a few of my own, but I think beyond about 10, it used to start to really struggle. So yeah, hats off to them. They're a really good team that care about their show, and I slightly wish it was on another channel that gave it a bit more exposure, because it doesn't really get. Even though it's a big hit for Dave, it doesn't necessarily get that many raw viewers.
It's influencing everything, though. I mean, House of Games wouldn't have happened without Taskmaster. Absolutely not.
Yes, yes. It certainly breaks the mold in certain key areas, and that's always a good thing.
I quite like the fact that it's not uber popular, that it isn't everyone doesn't know about it. It's kind of like a little club that we're all in, the Taskmaster Club.
Yeah, well, Only Connect was a bit like that originally. That's because nobody could tune into BBC 4. Okay, right, number 3.
Only Connect.
Speaking of.
So that's gone down 1 position. I'm not completely surprised by that. I think the fact that it's on 30, whatever it is, 37 weeks a year, does sort of make it outstay its welcome a little bit, perhaps.
And the move to put it on a Friday evening was quite frankly mind-boggling.
Yes, they lost about 40% of their audience over the weeks for that. And I sort of know why they did it, because they're trying to grow other shows, and they sort of think, well, we'll put Only Connect on anywhere because the viewers will always find it. However, it was always very, very convenient being on after University Challenge. So yeah, I don't think that was brilliant, but I know the kind of why they're doing it, because they're trying to give exposure to their cooking shows and their things like Britain's Loneliest Vicar or whatever else they have. Well, it is. It's always about somebody in a parish in Lewis or something that they have on instead. So I think Mondays must be a day for for the clergy to have a day off. Right. Okay. So is it going to be Pointless in the Chase again?
I'm going to stick my neck out and say I think the Chase is going to come at number 2 and Pointless at number 1. That's my gut instinct.
I wonder if the Chase might have maybe pipped the Post because I think the ratings are doing very, very well.
See, it's interesting because obviously Richard Osman advertised this poll a couple of weeks ago, and he had 500,000 viewers, 500,000 followers, and only one of the Chasers advertised this poll. But number 2 is Pointless.
There we are.
The vote didn't come out.
To say.
It's interesting.
How many years has Pointless been number 1?
About 5, I think.
Oh, there's going to be some smug faces at ITV Towers tomorrow morning.
Pretty much every single comment pointed out for repeats.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, I said last year that I thought that Pointless's repeat schedule might start to hurt the brand, and I know technically as that the ratings don't actually reflect that, but in terms of my personal viewing habits, the fact that they swap in and out of repeats quite so often makes it almost impossible to work out whether you've seen an episode before or not. And frankly, I gave up trying. I have to be honest, and I watched Tenable or something else instead.
My gut says it's a show in decline. I think it will still be around for a couple of years yet, but
the new set will make it a lot easier to tell.
It'll make it a lot easier
to tell.
It's not that different. It's a bit more blue, but that's about as exciting as it gets. And some of the graphics are a bit.
It has lighting on the floor.
That's true, but it's not. It's an evolution rather than a revolution, if that's what you're thinking. Anyway, at number 1 is Cheap. No, it's not. So a stormer of a year, really. So.
Very well done to it. Very well done.
Very well done.
What's the gap between 1 and 2?
5 votes, 4 votes.
Okay, so pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. But you know, it is a category that's been decided on by one single vote in the past, so it's all fair game. Wow. Well, I think it's fair enough because I think there's been quite a bit more love for the show recently, and the fact that it's had the celebrity shows embedded in quite nicely on Saturdays.
They had family shows this year as well, and I quite liked them because it did bring a slightly different dynamic, and I quite liked it. I saw a lot of hate for it on Twitter, but then, of course, you would on Twitter. But I quite like the family editions as well. In terms of repeats, does the Chase do many repeats throughout the year? Is the same proportion as Pointless, is it?
It tends to do it during sort of half terms and term holidays, but it handily, if you go on a TV guide, ITV will mark them up as new for every new episode, so you know it's not a repeat, which is useful. It will say new The Chase on all the TV guides and on television when you look it up.
The thing about a Chase repeat is there's far more questions on it. So even if it is a repeat, you're far less likely to remember all the ins and outs. You might remember the result, but the questions themselves, you won't remember as much. Whereas on Pointless, if there's only, 6 or 7 sort of questions, I know there's questions within questions, but you sort of remember them better in Pointless. So a repeat is more damaging to Pointless than it is to the Chase.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's see what the Twitter RT think. Surprising, William James says, surprising to note that the usual top 3 Pointless Only Connect Chase all didn't win Best New Show. That is very interesting.
It's interesting. I think interesting also to point out Tenable is that it's last year it was 10th. And when Pointless started, in its first year, it was 9th before it jumped up to about 5th, then to the top. So Tenable's following a very similar sort of arc to Pointless. So if it can keep its questions up, which is might be a big ask, Tenable could well be topping this list in a couple of years' time, I reckon.
Bold words.
Joe Gardner says it's a great top 5 for the Hall of Fame. Well, we've moved on from that.
Hello to Mark Lebet, very happy about this result.
Yes. Joe Gardner says that Team Tenable have much more up their sleeves when it's needed. I don't know whether does he work in television? He may be one of the questioners.
Yes, yes.
Sorry.
He works. You met him whilst we were working on Armchair Detectives, I believe.
That Joe.
That's Joe. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well done. Well done, Joe. Thanks for writing.
He remembered you.
Good work on that. He also says that we should petition to commission Britain's loneliest vicar.
Well, there was a high turnout of vicars.
Can I just say that is copyright David Bodycon. However, all international rights are available. So tweet me after the show. Okay. Well, there'll be obviously more shock reaction. You can all read it to yourself, of course, on the Twitter feed. Or so that means that it's the game show Prime Minister of the UK this year is Bradley Walsh.
Wow!
It's the Chase has won the Golden Five. So there we are. Let's quickly recap your viewer poll votes. So for that, I'm going to have to jiggle with my screen share. So again,
well, whilst you pull that up, I found very difficult to. I thought it was very difficult to award my ultimate worst show. I thought my best show was quite easy, but I struggled with the worst show.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully that's come up on the screen fine. No,
it's showing you on YouTube. Oh, we go. Yes,
there we are. Yeah,
there was a bit of a slight delay. So, of the 55 responses we've had now, in your opinion, which decade has had the best game shows? And most people say the 1990s.
No, I can agree with that. So you think of all the shows that everyone really, really loves. Your Nightmares, Crystal Mazes, other stuff.
Do you think that would be because it was all less about money then? More about the game?
There was definitely more experimental stuff allowed certainly in the early part of the 90s. I would say things like Nightmare and Crystal Maze are sort of all honorarily late 80s.
Yes, I think that's fair as well. But
in style, anyway.
Yeah.
But the 2000s and 1980s have shared equal with 20%. Right, so the poll of polls. Which of the last 12 past winners of the worst show award is your ultimate worst show? Frankly, nobody has a clue. But of those, Red or Black has got more votes than anybody else at 14.
For me, it was either Red or Black or Take on the Twisters, and I couldn't decide.
Oh, it was absolutely Take on the Twisters.
Well, The Colour of Money was second.
Bad show, but a great endgame. Make that the endgame for The Colour of Money, and it would have been great.
The Quiz Machine's good.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's still going, 10 years on. Unbelievable.
The poll for the best show, again, lots of split decisions. But of those, The Cube came first with 20% of the vote, followed by £1 Million Drop, which is sold very well abroad, and then Duel had some love as well.
At some point, £100,000 drops kind of Channel 4. I'm sure it was meant to be last year, but I seem to have put it back to this year now. So
they've certainly filmed it.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried getting a game show idea of your own on TV? And if so, how far did you get? Half of the audience have not at all. 10 people said they've had some ideas but didn't try them out. 9 people have said that they've tried things on social media. 5 have had meetings with professionals. And 4 people listening have had at least one idea commissioned.
Ooh.
So,
well, please tweet me, and I want to talk to you.
And then finally, the Hidden Gem Award. Outside of the main shows, which game shows of 2017 are the most underrated? And so the winner for that is Raven. If you consider that to be one of the shows that wasn't in major contention, if you think it was, then really the winner would be Lego Masters. So I'll let you be the judge of that. Beyond that, it was the fake news show with 8.
That came 17th, joint with Bromans, in fact. So
And then Don't Say It, Bring It had 5. Okay. So there we are. In a year of some change and some shocks, we come to the end of our broadcast. So thanks very much indeed for everyone who's been voting. It'd be very interesting to hear all your comments. Now, there's a few things. By all means, keep your browsers pointed to ukgameshows.com because Nick has kindly done a summary of all of the results, but also he's taken your comments, which are much more detailed than we have time to cover here. And they're always very interesting, and they also cover things like your favorite moments of the year as well. Lots of funny YouTube clips. So do look out for that. And we will try and put up the data from our polls when we finish those. We'll put that up there so that you can read that in detail as well. So that's it for now. It just remains to thank Dan for joining us. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm off to lie down after finding out Pointless has been overtaken by the chase.
And special thanks to Nick for all his hard work as our returning officer again this year.
Thank you very much. On the next half hour, formatting the report so it fits for UK Game Show page wiki system. It'll take a little bit of time, so about 10:30 probably. I'll tweet it out.
Yeah, just keep following Nick on the Bottlers Bar Twitter feed. And so from Dan, Nick, and myself, David Bodicum, thanks very much indeed for joining us. And see you again next year. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.